The sky over the limestone quarry outside Jerusalem goes completely dark at noon. It is a thick, unnatural blackness that settles over the entire city. He pushes against the spike. He uses his last ounce of oxygen to project his voice out into the dark, and the balance is legally zero. Why do so many of us wake up every single morning feeling like we still owe a massive payment? A man stands at a polished mahogany counter in a bank, sliding a thick stack of worn bills across the glass. The teller looks at the glowing screen, blinks in confusion, and pushes the cash back across the counter. The mortgage is already cleared. An anonymous benefactor wired the exact payoff amount the day before, leaving the account completely settled. But the man refuses to pick up the cash. He shakes his head, slides the money forward again, and demands that the teller apply his small handful of bills to the cleared account. It is a completely absurd scenario, but it is exactly how the vast majority of the religious world operates every single day. We are a species fundamentally addicted to the ledger. We inherently understand transactions, hourly wages, and balancing the scales. When someone hands us a gift of immense value, a sudden, uncomfortable weight settles deep into our chest. The human brain immediately begins calculating how to return the favor, how to even the score, how to erase the psychological deficit. So, when we are handed a permanently cancelled chirographon, our religious instinct completely short-circuits. We simply cannot tolerate a zero balance. He shouts a single word in Greek, Tetelestai. Then, his head falls forward. Most people assume this is a gasp of surrender. Instead of walking out of the marketplace in actual freedom, we set up camp on the cold stone floor of the counting room. We spend decades trying to make installment payments on a spiritual debt that was legally obliterated 2,000 years ago. We try to pay it down with exhausted, hollow service, treating our volunteer hours like desperate deposits into a heavenly ATM. We try to pay it down with manufactured misery, dragging ourselves through life with a sour, metallic taste of guilt in the back of our throats. We secretly assume that if we just punish ourselves enough, if we just feel bad enough about our inevitable failures, that emotional pain will somehow count as valid currency. This frantic, exhausting cycle is not holy devotion. It is a refusal to read the receipt. When you attempt to hand over your own money for a debt that has already been cleared by someone else, you are no longer making a payment. You are issuing an insult. You are standing at the foot of the Roman timber, looking at the blood drying on the wood, looking at the massive, eternal Tetelestai stamped across your entire existence, and saying, "That was a good start, but it was not quite enough. Let me add my own spare change." The great tragedy of modern faith is not that we have forgotten the crucifixion. We hear the standard English translation, "It is finished," and we read it as a tragic cry of defeat. A man who knows he has lost. It is that we have reduced it to a down payment. But this relentless urge to keep earning, to keep proving our worth, does not just come from our own broken psychology. It is being actively cultivated by a legal expert who refuses to leave the courtroom. Picture the scene in the ancient book of Job. Celestial beings gather before a massive, blinding throne. The air crackles with pure light. The accuser walks into the assembly. There is white dust on his leather sandals. He carries a heavy, rolled parchment in his hands. He unrolls it with a sharp snap. He is the prosecuting attorney of the cosmos. His Hebrew title is Ha-Satan. It literally means the adversary. His entire existence revolves around the ledger. He builds airtight legal cases. He tracks every single moral compromise. He memorizes your quietest, darkest thoughts. He brings the certificate of debt to the ultimate judge. He points to your handwriting at the bottom. He demands an exact, punishing payment. For centuries, he possessed absolute legal ground. He held the handwritten chirographon. The evidence against humanity was undeniable. The black ink was completely dry. He never lost a single case in that room. But the cross violently restructures the courtroom. The execution changes the legal reality of the universe. The sky goes pitch black at noon. The Galilean carpenter draws a final breath. He shouts the word into the dark. looking down at the bloody, sudden end of a 3-year ministry, simply stating the obvious. The movement is crushed. The teaching is over. The rusted iron spike does not just pierce flesh. It pins the hostile document to the wood. The red blood washes across the dark ink. The Tetelestai stamp is applied. The transaction is legally and permanently zeroed out. The accuser still walks into the throne room today. He still paces the cold stone floor. He still shouts his vicious accusations. He still demands immediate justice. But he's holding a completely blank page. He has no remaining evidence. He has no valid certificate of debt. His legal standing has been entirely stripped away. The persistent voice of guilt you hear is not a holy conviction. It is the desperation of a disbarred prosecutor. He cannot take your life. He cannot touch your soul. He cannot present a canceled receipt to the judge. So he takes his lies directly to you. All he can do is lie about your account balance. He whispers that the payment was not enough. He insists that you still owe the court. He tells you the cross was incomplete. He wants you exhausted. He wants you terrified. He wants you trapped on the floor of the counting room. He knows he cannot win in the courtroom anymore. So he tries to win in your own mind. He relies on your ignorance of the receipt. He hopes you never learn how to read Greek. He hopes you never discover what that final shout actually meant. The empire has won. And from the perspective of the soldiers rolling dice in the dirt, it certainly looks like an ending. But if the prosecutor has been permanently disbarred, and the receipt is fully visible, why are we still so eager to believe him? A man stares at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, listening to the low, mechanical hum of a refrigerator in the dark, mentally calculating his exact worth based on what he managed to produce during the daylight hours. His jaw is tight. His shoulders carry a heavy, physical ache. His mind is running a relentless, unforgiving audit of his own relevance. This is the default setting of the modern human condition. We are born into an ecosystem of strict transactions, where every ounce of security must be purchased with an equal amount of sweat. We are conditioned from childhood to understand that love is conditional, that approval is a wage, and that rest is only permitted after the daily quota has been met. The ledger is not just a Roman artifact buried in the sands of the 1st century. It is the fundamental architecture of our own neurology. So when we step into a sanctuary, we instinctively carry that exact same heavy, transactional posture through the wooden doors. We may sing loud, emotional songs about absolute grace, but our bodies remain braced for a spiritual performance review. We approach the divine with a mental clipboard in our hands, constantly terrified that our output is slipping, that our volunteer hours are insufficient, and that God is slowly losing patience with our lack of productivity. But if you look closer at the exact word he chose, at the Greek vocabulary used in the streets, just a few miles away, we invent elaborate religious ladders to climb, measuring our devotion by the minute and weighing our holiness by the chapter, frantically trying to prove that we deserve to stay in the room. We treat the creator of the universe like a disappointed regional manager who is constantly on the verge of terminating our contract. This religious exhaustion is not a mark of holiness. It is the symptom of a forgotten receipt. The ancient Roman citizen understood that when the magistrate stamped Tetelestai on the parchment, the transaction was closed forever. He did not return to the counting room, all the next week, with an extra bag of grain, nervously offering it to the magistrate just in case the ink had faded. He walked out of the door, and he went home. But when we refuse to rest in the finished work of the cross, we are effectively arguing with the dead Galilean carpenter. We are standing in the darkness of the limestone quarry, looking at the blood drying on the rusted iron spike, and whispering that his final breath was insufficient. We are choosing to live in a debtor's prison with the cold iron cell door hanging wide open, the lock shattered on the floor, and the judge waving us out into the sunlight. We prefer the prison because the prison makes sense to our 5 transactional minds. In the prison, we can at least try to maintain control by earning our way out. But the absolute, terrifying beauty of the gospel, at the receipts buried in the sands of the ancient world, you start to perceive something that the tragic reading completely misses. Is that the payment system has been dismantled completely. The currency of your own self-righteousness has been entirely devalued. Not to humiliate you, but to set you free from the crushing, impossible burden of maintaining your own ledger. You are invited to step completely out of the marketplace. But to do that, you have to let go of the one thing the human ego refuses to surrender. A magistrate dipped his reed pen into crushed soot, and a crushing Roman debt was legally zeroed out. A soldier lifted a bitter sponge on a hyssop branch, and the vocal cords of a dying king were cleared for a final shout. A carpenter pushed his torn back against a rusted iron spike, and a single word of marketplace commerce shattered the dark. A prisoner in a stone cell wrote of a handwritten ledger, and the invisible debt of the human soul was finally exposed. A heavy mallet swung down in a limestone quarry, and the hostile witness was pinned permanently to the wood. A disbarred prosecutor walked into the cosmic throne room and found his airtight evidence was now a completely blank page. An exhausted world tried to slide its worn bills across the glass, and a canceled receipt was handed back instead. This word is not a white flag. It is an administrative receipt. To understand the sheer weight of what he shouted, one word, one receipt. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the sponge. The cheap, sour wine dripping from his chin into the white dust. He did not ask for a drink to ease the burning pain of the execution. He asked for moisture because a suffocating man cannot afford to whisper. And he needed the sheer physical volume to ensure the entire quarry heard the transaction being closed. If you are in a season where you are lying awake at 3 a.m. listening to the refrigerator hum, mentally calculating what you still owe the creator of the universe, stop counting. Stop trying to slide your small handful of worn bills across the glass. The transaction is over. The dark ink is completely dry. The word has already been shouted into the dark. And may the God who refused to leave you on the cold stone floor of the counting room walk with you out into the sunlight, carrying a receipt you could never have purchased on your own. If this lifted a weight off your chest, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted from trying to earn their way into the room. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. You cannot look in a religious dictionary. You have to step down off the skull-shaped hill. You have to walk away from the executioners and the religious leaders. And you have to step into the loud, crowded, aggressively bureaucratic counting rooms. The air is perfectly still. The white dust of the road sticks to the sweat of the execution squad of the 1st century Roman Empire, because he did not die speaking the language of the temple. He died speaking the language of the marketplace. The Roman Empire did not secure its dominance with iron alone. It conquered the world with ink. Walk through the bustling marketplaces of Ephesus, Corinth, or Jerusalem in the 1st century, and beneath the shouting of merchants, you will hear the relentless, rhythmic scratch of split reed pens on rough papyrus. Rome is an empire obsessed with accounting. Every bushel of barley, every copper coin, every tax levied on a cart passing through a city gate is meticulously recorded. The provincial archives are overflowing with the dry, dusty smell of rolled parchment and heavy leather ledgers. In this world, the accounting ledger is the absolute authority. If you borrow money to buy seed for a field or supplies for a trade, a handwritten certificate of debt is drawn up. It lists exactly what you owe, down to the final fraction of a denarius. You sign it with your own hand, and the moment the dark ink dries, that document becomes your master. This parchment is a living, breathing shadow. 4 Roman soldiers who are currently passing the time by gambling at the base of 3 vertical wooden beams. You wake up with it. You go to sleep with it. It dictates what you eat, where you travel, and how you speak to the men in power. If the seasonal rains fail and your crop dies, the debt remains. If a sudden storm sinks your merchant ship, the debt remains. There is no modern concept of bankruptcy. There is no legal loophole or leniency. If you cannot pay, the local magistrate comes for your ancestral land. If the land does not cover the balance, he comes for your children. If that is still not enough, he comes for your own physical body. You are dragged into a cold stone cell in a debtor's prison, or you are placed on an auction block and sold into foreign slavery. There is no grace in a Roman ledger. A financial debt in the ancient world is not a temporary inconvenience. It is an existential threat. It is the physical weight that you carry in your chest and your jaw every waking moment. The only way to survive, the only way to be truly free, is to walk into the magistrate's counting room. The man in the center is dying a death engineered by the empire to be as public and agonizing as possible, and hand over the exact sum required. When that rare, nearly impossible moment occurs, the creditor takes your handwritten certificate. He dips his pen into a clay inkwell of crushed soot and gum Arabic. He writes one specific word boldly, across the face of the document. He hands it back to you, and the legal hold is completely dissolved. The claim on your life is permanently broken, but the detail that changes how you read the crucifixion is what happens right before that specific word echoes across the limestone quarry. John chapter 19, verse 18. Jesus hangs in the unnatural darkness. His body is a ruin. His breathing is shallow. He knows the work is complete. He knows the ancient prophecies are secured, but he does not speak the final word yet. He waits. He forces a ragged breath. He speaks two words: I thirst. A jar of cheap, sour wine sits on the ground nearby. It is the daily ration of the Roman soldiers. It smells of sharp vinegar and stale sweat. A soldier plunges a rough sea sponge into the jar. He jams it onto the end of a hyssop stalk. He lifts it through the still, heavy air. He presses the dripping sponge firmly against cracked, bleeding lips. This specific detail matters. Hyssop is not a random plant. 1,500 years earlier, a captive nation stood in Egypt. They dipped hyssop branches into the blood of a spotless lamb. Every inhale requires him to push his entire body weight up against a square. Rusted iron spike driven through his ankle bones. They painted their wooden doorposts to escape the angel of death. Now, the hyssop is lifted one last time. The blood of the final lamb drips onto the wood. The bitter wine touches his tongue. It burns down his parched throat. This request for a drink is not a final plea for comfort. It is the physical preparation for a royal decree. He needs moisture in his throat. He needs his vocal cords to function clearly one last time. He needs volume. The sponge is pulled away. The vinegar drips from his chin into the dust. He plants his feet against the square iron spike. He pushes upward with everything he has left. The rusted metal grinds against his ankle bones. His torn back drags against the rough splinters of the upright beam. White-hot pain tears through his nervous system. He ignores it. He opens his crushed chest. He draws the dry air of the quarry into his failing lungs. He fills them to absolute capacity. A dying man has no breath to waste. A suffocating man cannot afford to shout. But he does not whisper. He does not mumble softly into his own chest. John's gospel records that he cries out with a loud voice. He projects the sound over the helmets of the executioners. He throws it across the limestone rocks. He shouts the word, Tetelestai. Then, his head falls forward. The breath stops. The lungs collapse. The Roman soldiers look up from their dice. Every time, he lifts himself. His shredded back scrapes against rough timber, tearing the wounds open all over again. They see a dead Galilean carpenter. The religious leaders, standing in the shadows, see a silenced threat. They assume the story has come to its violent conclusion. But any merchant standing in that crowd hears something else entirely. The word Jesus shouts from the cross is the Greek verb Tetelestai. It is translated in most of our modern English Bibles as a passive, defeated phrase. It is finished. That translation carries the heavy, somber tone of a curtain dropping on a tragedy. It sounds like a man resigning himself to the inevitable. But if you dig through the archaeological sands of the Middle East, you will find a physical reality that completely shatters that tragic tone. In the late 19th century, archaeologists began excavating ancient rubbish dumps in Egypt, pulling out thousands of fragile, disintegrating papyrus documents. They found personal letters, shopping lists, and endless piles of Roman tax documents. And written aggressively across the face of these brittle receipts, often in thick, dark ink, was the exact same word Jesus shouted, Tetelestai. It comes from the root word teleo, which means to bring something to its intended goal, to complete a journey, or to accomplish a task. But in the first-century marketplace, it possessed a highly specific, undeniable meaning. It meant paid in full. When a Roman citizen finally handed over the last heavy copper coin to clear a crushing debt, he is doing this just to draw enough oxygen into his failing lungs. He is hung there for 6 hours. He is suffocating. The magistrate did not just tear up the paper. He stamped it. He wrote Tetelestai across the ledger, legally certifying that the debt was zeroed out. The citizen was completely free from the shadow of the debt, and the authorities could never come for his land or his body again. If the historical reality of this single word is shifting how you see the cross, you are exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the dark ink dries on the ancient receipt, but the grammar of the word reveals something even more staggering than the vocabulary itself. Jesus does not shout this word in the aorist tense. If he had, it would translate to, "I finished it," referring to a past event that is simply over and done, fading into history. He shouts it in the perfect tense. In the Greek language, the perfect tense is reserved for something profoundly specific. It describes an action that was entirely completed in the past, but the results of that action continue to exist in full force into the present, forever. It is an action with an unending echo. When he pushes up on the iron spike and shouts, Tetelestai, he is not saying, "My pain is over." He is making a binding, legal declaration. It was paid in full. In a few moments, the Roman soldiers will take an iron mallet and shatter the shin bones of the men on his left and right. It stands paid in full right now, and it will remain paid in full forever. He turns the site of imperial execution into a cosmic counting room. He takes the deepest, most terrifying human deficit and zeroes out the balance. The cry from the wood was not a white flag, it was a receipt. That single word changes the entire mechanism of the cross. But to understand exactly what ledger was being canceled, you have to look at another piece of ancient paper. 30 years after the darkness lifts from Jerusalem, a man sits in a damp stone cell. A Roman guard sleeps against the heavy wooden door. The prisoner is chained by the wrist. Every time he moves his hand, the cold iron links scrape against the stone floor. He dips a split-reed pen into a shallow clay inkwell. He is writing a letter to a small community of believers in the city of Colossae, attempting to explain the exact legal mechanics of what that final shout from the cross actually accomplished. He writes Colossians chapter 2, verse 14, and he uses a terrifying Greek word, chirographin. It translates literally as a handwritten document. But in the ancient Roman world, it was the specific, terrifying legal term for a debtor's handwritten bond. It is the ultimate certificate of debt, signed in your own handwriting, acknowledging exactly what you owe, ensuring they can no longer push up to breathe. The end is minutes away. The man in the center draws one final, agonizing breath. Paul takes this marketplace terror and applies it to the human soul. He says there is a spiritual chirographon. It is the absolute, undeniable record of your moral bankruptcy. It records every moment of pride, every hidden betrayal, every silent resentment, every time you chose to build your own kingdom on the ruins of someone else's. The list is impossibly long. The ink is completely dry. The document stands against us. Paul writes, it is a hostile witness. It is an unpayable balance. But then, the prisoner in the stone cell writes exactly what the dying carpenter did, to the ledger. He does not negotiate the balance. He does not offer a payment plan. He does not file the document away in a heavenly archive to hold it over our heads. He takes the chirographon, and he nails it to the cross. When the Roman executioner swings the heavy iron mallet, He assumes he is simply securing a political rebel to a wooden beam. He does not know what is actually being fastened to the timber. The iron spike does not just pierce human flesh. It pierces an eternal ledger. The blood does not just run down the splinters of the wood. It washes across the dark ink of the handwritten debt. The chiragraphon is cancelled. The Tetelestai receipt is issued. The transaction is completely, violently, and permanently finished. But if the document is destroyed,